So, good morning. This is Dr. Boss, and I wanted to go over a few things with you while you are given the opportunity to revise your EBM paper number 1. So, the first thing I want to say is I'm sorry I don't have my picture on there. I'm not sure how to put it on there, but we're just going to go without it. So, I'm sure many of you are really upset about your grades and disappointed in yourself on this first paper that you wrote, but I think you need to not beat yourself up, and I think you need to realize that this is your first paper in the graduate program. So it's okay that it wasn't perfect, and take this opportunity to revise it and you'll be on track. So this is the very first paper in this course, and so I'm going to scroll down to Dr. Cole has it here, the objectives, the assignment, which is to identify a management problem as it applies to your practice setting, describe the background and significance as it relates to your practice setting, and then also in the literature, develop a PICO question, 2 to 3 pages. So the first thing I do when I am looking or beginning to write a paper is that I look at the rubric and see how much points are in each section. So then you really know, if something's worth 20 points versus 5 points, then you really need to make sure that the 20-point section is very well addressed. The second thing I do is use the subheadings here in the rubric as my subheadings for my paper. So I'll go ahead and just go in there already and write introduction, description of problem, background of problem as related to, but you could say background of problem in practice setting, background of problem in literature, significance of problem in practice setting, significance of problem in literature, and searchable PICO question or PICO question. So I know that seems very basic, but in terms of grading, the faculty want to be able to see exactly what part of your paper are you presenting for each section. It's very difficult to figure out and give you points on specific sections if you don't have sections. So it's just better for you, and it makes the grading will be more meaningful to you as well. So that's where I start. So I'm just going to go through this paper and kind of tell you what I would be writing or what you would expect to be writing with an example that I have, and also just some strategies. So I don't know if I told you or not, but I'm also a student. So I'm a student at University of Houston full time. I take 9 hours a semester, and I am getting a doctorate in education. And so I really understand where you are, in terms of having to work and having a family and having school and everything. And I'm very good at getting things done. And so that means that I'm good at prioritizing my time and getting things done efficiently and making the most, of most of the experiences. So I can share some of that with you, my perspectives of how I get schoolwork done in the same way that we all have these crazy lives. So if you look at this very first criteria, correct cover page, that's 5 points. So that's 5 free points. So that means APA 7, you go in the book and you do the title page exactly like they have it. And that is, I'm looking for the page. Let me find it, hold on. Paper Elements in Format, Chapter 2, Required Elements. Or just go to Sample Papers on page 50. So flip to page 50. And they have a sample professional paper and they have a sample student paper. So I would go then to page 61, where it has a sample student paper, and copy it. That's what your cover page should look like. So that's 5 free points. That should not be wrong. You have the answer. You should count on those being good to start with. Okay, so then you go into your introduction. So really what should be in the introduction as well as the conclusion is a brief overview of what's going to be in your paper and what you're going to talk about, and a summary of the main points. And so typically I'll go from general to specific. So that's, general information to specific information. So in terms of the introduction to this paper, you're going to want to talk about what's the purpose of the paper. So the purpose of this paper is to identify a management problem as it applies in my practice setting. I'm going to talk in first person, but of course you wouldn't write in first person, but you're going to describe the background and the significance. I've identified the problem as X. In general terms, here's the significance, here's the background, and I will form a PICO question based on the evidence that I find and how it relates to my problem. So really that should be the introduction. Short, concise, no more than probably 5 sentences or so. And then really that's the same information, very similar information that should be in the conclusion. And I'll give you kind of my approach. I don't write the introduction and conclusion until last because, I don't really know what I think I might be writing in the whole meat of the paper might change. And so then I'd have to go back and change the introduction and the conclusion. So I just save those for the end and then write them based on what I wrote. So you see that's 5 points. So, I think that's reasonable. 1 paragraph, 5 or so sentences. So the first subheading after that is a concise, thorough description of the problem. So I'm going to use the example of ineffective leadership skills. So we'll just say that I am a CNO or a director in the hospital, and I believe, or I think, I have reason to believe that the nurse managers have poor leadership skills. So that's what I'm going to talk about in general terms when I'm talking about concise, thorough description of the problem. And that's 15 points. So that right there should tell you that it deserves a good bit of your attention in your explanation. So if I'm talking about ineffective leadership skills, then I'm going to start by saying something about how leadership skills are defined as A, B, C. Maybe what are some examples of good leadership skills? What are examples of ineffective leadership skills? So it's a very broad type of introduction or description of the problem. So, you could even say, bad or ineffective leadership skills, could be either defined this way or they're shown, or you can see them with poor communication. Maybe just a few examples of specific leadership skills that aren't good, and put that in just very general terms. Probably 1 to 2 paragraphs. I think it's a good idea. I would definitely start out there with talking about what is leadership skills. What does that mean anyway? And then go on to end up and be more specific as you're talking about ineffective leadership skills. And then the next section is the background of the problem as it relates to your practice setting. So here you're going to build on what you've already said in terms of the general description of the problem. So you could talk about, ineffective leadership skills is something that you have noticed on your unit in your hospital. The data to support that would be that you have high turnover, employee turnover. You have low employee engagement. You have employees who don't seem to work as a team. So really, what is it that you're seeing that supports your suspicion or your diagnosis of whatever the problem is? So that's going to be in your practice setting. I think it's important to include data here. So that could be HCAP scores in communication is low. That could be, maybe y'all did some sort of employee engagement survey, employee satisfaction, those scores were low. And so that supports what you're saying. So then you go to background of the problem as presented in the literature. So here we go to the evidence. So all of, you're always thinking of evidence-based management as, the whole process is going to be that you find a problem, you go to the literature and find out about what they say about it. You find out what's a good intervention or way to solve the problem that's in the evidence, and then you bring that back to your practice setting. So that's what you're really setting up here in this first paper. So background of the problem as presented in the literature. So that's 5 points. And so I would say something about how, ineffective leadership skills. I'd probably start out saying, the evidence is consistent with what I am seeing in my practice setting. So, ineffective leadership skills looks like, I bet there's some sort of, I'm trying to think of a statistic. I bet there's some sort of statistic or something that you could say that 90% of nurses who are burned out report that it's directly from poor leadership skills or being not in alignment with the leadership. So there is evidence that I'm thinking of that does talk about how, in general, poor leadership skills or ineffective leadership skills does affect employee engagement and employee performance and attrition and all of that. So you're really saying, you're backing up what you said in your previous paragraph. So if you're saying we have poor communication, high turnover, whatever, then that should be also in this next paragraph here, then you should present the evidence that supports that for the rest of the world. So then what you're seeing is consistent with what's in the literature. So then you go to the significance of the problem as it relates to your practice setting. So, with all of these different topics, you can go in lots of different ways. You can frame it in different ways and have different focuses. So really, I'm thinking, what is the significance of poor leadership skills? Why do we care? So, you could tie it to, you have the lack of employee engagement, high turnover, high nurse burnout. But why do we even care about that? We care about that because ultimately we think we might have poor patient outcomes as a result. And so you could say we have an unusually high amount of falls. We have an unusually high amount of medication errors. You could say that data. So, out of, in our hospital, we gave, there's a total of 3,000 medications given in the entire hospital in the month of May. And the rate of medication error was 5% or whatever. So come up with some sort of data to support the significance as it relates to your own practice setting, and then go back to the literature into the next paragraph there, significance of problem as presented in the literature. Again, you're going to get the evidence. So, you need to support your thoughts on why this is such a problem, why we care about it, why you need to do something about it. So, you could say, go down the line that, yeah, there is evidence to say that poor leadership or ineffective leadership is not only directly related to engagement, employee engagement and employee performance problems, but also poor patient outcomes. So there is literature to say that there is more patient falls. There are more higher morbidity and mortality. There are more infections, whatever. There's more problems in terms of patient outcomes when the leadership is deemed ineffective or not good. So that's what you will put in that paragraph. Then you're thinking about a searchable PICO question. So you have, so far you've gone through, this is the problem I'm thinking, this is the problem as I'm seeing it, and then now based on the evidence, how can I move forward with a PICO question? So this PICO question might look like something, so I'm thinking, okay, we have poor leadership skills in the nurse manager, so we really need to do something about it. And so there needs to be maybe some sort of teaching or a boot camp or something, some intervention to teach these nursing leadership skills. So then the PICO would be something like, what is you're looking at what is the difference in employee engagement and patient outcomes in nurse managers who received leadership training versus those who did not over a 6-month or 1-year period. So that's just an example where you have the population as the nurse managers, the intervention is the nurse leadership program or this intervention, this training intervention of some sort. The comparison is not getting one, and then the outcome is the employee engagement scores and the patient outcomes. And so, realistically, the patient outcomes, that's going to take longer to see a difference in. The first thing that you'll see and the easiest to measure would be the employee piece, but that's fine. You just have to make sure that if you're saying, that's a realistic time frame for what your intervention is. So that's why I said for at least 6 months or maybe even a year, if you really want to track these patient outcomes over a year and look at them along with the employee piece, I think that would be very meaningful information. And then you go down to the conclusion. And so you're basically going to restate what you just said in the paper, a summary of your major points. So back to saying ineffective leadership skills is this problem related to employee engagement, poor engagement, medication errors, poor communication, all that you've already said in terms of the background, and then restate what you said in the significance, just the major points, and then one sentence to tie it all together, and that should be it. And then in terms of APA format, grammar, and writing style, so I just want to make it clear that you're in graduate school, and our goal is really to transform your thinking, to help you grow in the way that you think and have a growth mindset so that you can make change and be a better leader moving forward. So the focus of grad school is not for you to focus on APA format, grammar, or writing style. But so having said that, my recommendation, as you right now probably don't have the APA format memorized, is that you just start out, you write the paper. So get words on the paper in the subheadings and make sure, spend the most of your time making sure that you believe that you're meeting each section of the rubric in terms of what you're saying and the amount of detail that you provide, the amount of thought that you provide. And then once you've done that, that's really where the bulk of your time should be. The content. What are you thinking? How are you thinking? And then, so you have a paper then now that's double spaced with 5 pages or so of paragraphs on it. So then I would go back to the APA format book and just open it up and just go back to, it looks like it's that section 2, I think is the best page to start, page 29. So let's see. Paper elements and format, page 29. Title page. So then it has every little thing that needs to go on the student title page. Then it says on page 31, the title. It even tells you that it should summarize the main idea of the paper simply and, if possible, in a way that's engaging for readers. The author name, the author affiliation. Page 2 or page 37, 2.8. So in the past, running head was on every paper. But according to this APA 7, the running head is not required in a student paper unless it's required by the faculty. So that is not the case here. So you don't need a running head. And you can see that on page 37. The other thing that I can say we don't require for this course is an abstract. So you don't have to put an abstract in front of your paper. So just FYI, you don't need the abstract or the keywords. But then it goes on page 39 and talks to you about the text and the reference list. Footnotes, you shouldn't have that probably, and you probably won't have appendices. The order of the pages. Font is on page 44. Special characters. Line spacing is on page 45. Margins, paragraph alignment, paragraph indentation, paragraph length. Page 47, the organizational piece, so heading levels, that's important. And this is a page that you could mark 48, where it has the levels of the formatting. The levels of the headings. There's 5, and so it tells you, does it need to be centered, or is it on the left, or is it in italics? And then you have, starting then on page 61 that we were there before, was a sample student paper where it actually has a sample of one, and then it goes through all the same elements. So I say all that to say, just to reiterate it again, your focus and your reason for coming to graduate school is to grow yourself in the way that you think, in the way that you're able to manage people and hopefully make change and positive outcomes for patients in the future. It is not to become an expert in APA. However, it's not difficult to spend a reasonable amount of time on it because it is worth 10 points. So my approach, again, would be my recommendation until you get it memorized, because I think you will pretty soon as you start writing more and more papers. But write the paper, the content, the detail, the thought process is what we're really looking for and what we value the most. Then once you have that settled and you're happy with that, then go to the APA format and just go through this. Mostly looks like chapter 2, and then you just make all those little minor changes according to the APA format. Something I want to tell you not to do is I have a student in another program who didn't turn their paper in on time because of APA. So she turned it in 3 or 4 days late. So that ended up being 5 points a day, 15 to 20 points off just for being late for APA, when here the APA format is only worth 10 points. So I don't think that's a good strategy to get 20 points off for being late for APA when the APA was only worth 10 points. So I think that's something that you need to think about, as you are dividing up your time, because the reality is that you work full-time, you have a family, you're a full-time student, the healthcare system, you have been affected likely more than almost anybody else in this pandemic and these uncertain times and all that's going on. So you need to be able to manage your time in a way that your energy is put really where you're going to get the most value in your paper. And holding the paper 3 or 4 days late to spend 3 or 4 days on APA for 10 points versus, you're getting the 15 to 20 points off doesn't make sense. And you won't last the length of the program if your energy isn't divided up in the best way possible. So that's what I have now. That's the tips that I have. Again, don't beat yourself up. This is your first paper. It's okay that you didn't get a good grade, but listen to this video and you can consult with any one of the faculty, any of your graders if you have additional questions. But be thoughtful in your revisions and we'll give you more feedback and go from there. But you're in the program because you are the cream of the crop and we believe in you. So I just want to reiterate, do not beat yourself up and let's just get this revised and move forward. Let us know if you have any questions.